So, how do you define yourself as a leader?
Yeah. So I really think of myself as, certainly very, try and be very collaborative, a listener, um, just a people oriented, right?
Mhm.
Um, Very much around working with people, solving problems. I mean, that may sound a little tactical, but I just derive a lot of personal strength and motivation. I know those are some of the future questions you have around working directly with my team, kind of rolling up my sleeves, understanding the problems that they're trying to solve. Everyone's got a job to do. And I find as a leader, if I get close to what my team is thinking and doing and feeling and the challenges that they have, I could then, take it up a few levels, increase my altitude, as they say, and think strategically on what we're doing and how and the impact that it has. So it's very much for me driving a lot of energy from understanding what my team is going through and also my business partners. I've been in technology my entire career, so I'm kind of wired around helping my team and helping my partners and the company I work for advance agenda, grow, solve important problems. I just really like to engage and understand and help solve and solution. So that's kind of the approach that I take as a leader.
Now, did you have a plan for your success that you followed, or
Nope,
was it not?
nope.
No. Okay.
No, that's so difficult to, I don't know. I mean, people ask you questions, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I've never been able to answer that question.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think my career trajectory has been as predictable as perhaps others are, as you think you could, but the world is very dynamic. You get opportunities that present themselves to you, and you got to jump at them. And so to me, it's also been around flexibility, looking at the opportunities and like, wow, that sounds really interesting. I think I could really learn a lot and contribute. So it's been more about that as opposed to having a very, very, prescribed,
Mhm.
set of career moves that got me where it got me.
Mhm. Well, that makes me feel a lot better.
Oh yeah, yeah. Don't sweat it. Like, it's you've got to keep an open mind. It'll be a theme in my remarks. You got to also be willing to take some risks and think about what does your gut tell you, right? It's like, what does your head tell you? What does your heart tell you?
Yeah.
And yeah, there's always going to be some conflict, right, between what your head says and what your heart and your gut says is the right thing for you to do.
Mhm.
And people talk about it as comfort zone, kind of getting out of that comfort zone. And maybe for women, that's a little bit tougher because we do want to be women are incredibly competitive,
Mhm.
right? We are so competitive and we want to be successful. And
Mhm.
sometimes that perhaps comes across as, taking our time longer to make decisions, but we are assessing a lot of factors, as we think about making decisions for ourselves, and what we're going to do next in our careers. And I certainly that's been a factor for me. But at some point, you got to make a decision. You got to go with your gut,
Yeah.
confidence in your ability to be successful, and lean on people to help you through the process.
Mhm. Now, what would you say is your one greatest strength or attribute as a leader?
Personal accountability. Like I take a lot of accountability for what I do, what my team does, and it's yeah. I think that that's been a really really important factor for me. And when I say accountability, it's yeah, like I'm responsible for what I do, and I take a lot of ownership
Mhm.
for it, which means, and to me that translates into really caring about the outcomes, in what I deliver or what I build or what I say, what I do. So that personal ownership, that personal accountability, is has probably been one of the most single consistent factors for me. And I think people see that. They see that I really, really care about what I do. And I put a lot of time and thought and energy in good outcomes. But I think it all boils down to feeling a strong sense of accountability and ownership, not blaming others for things that go bad. It's like, okay, what could I have done differently? But that ownership and accountability.
Now, what motivates you the most as a leader?
Yeah, it's making an impact, in people's lives, you think about it in a corporate setting, right? But I really do derive a lot of energy around the people that I work with. I do think of myself as a bit of as an enabler to helping, my team members be as successful as possible, feel a great sense of accomplishment, advance their careers as professionals. So that really motivates me when I've helped somebody be successful and solve a problem and fulfill their potential. I personally find that extremely satisfying. And then, obviously satisfied myself that I've enabled that to happen.
Now, teams are, of course, foundational to the core of, from a leadership perspective, leading, motivating them the right way in your own
Mhm.
style.
Yeah.
What is sort of your style, and do you feel that it's changed during the pandemic?
Oh yeah. I think the way that you deliver the messages has certainly changed through the pandemic, but I've always felt that with your teams that you lead, there's certain things that you owe people. Like you got to be really honest and transparent about what's happening. Like people just really need to know what's going on. That way they can make the best decisions as well. Like if you hold back information, the whole thing of knowledge is power, that doesn't work. That's never worked. Especially in today's environment where things change so quickly and information changes so quickly. You need to be very honest and transparent with your team members, and give people context. I've always been very, very thoughtful about helping people understand the context, the why we're doing what we're doing, the purpose behind what we're doing, as opposed to just kind of blindly executing a bunch of instructions, right? That, when you are a knowledge worker, like in the environment that I'm in, people have to make thoughtful decisions, and they can only really do that if they know why they're doing what they're doing and an awareness of the context. And I think through COVID, that's become even more important because you're not seeing people day to day. You're relying on video conferencing, like what we're doing today. And so good communication with great context, transparency and honesty, I think has become even more incredible, more and more important. And that's been a theme for me as well through my whole career, context and helping people understand what they're doing and why. I think it just makes people make better decisions.
Okay. Now, was there ever a challenge or obstacle that you faced that you found was sort of foundational to changing the way that you lead?
Um, the challenge, I think for me, it's more like it really was more about the work-life balance, mom, 3 kids. Um, I knew that I knew that I could always do a lot in my career and contribute. And I often struggled with, am I spending enough time at home being that mom? To me, that's a traditional set of struggles. So I would say that would have been one of the one of the things that always create at least a certain amount of conflict for me, as a leader. So yeah, probably the biggest factor. But at the end of the day, I had a lot of support at home.
Mm-hmm.
that allowed me to really, focus on my career. But in terms of like just the conflict, I would say that that's probably the biggest factor.
Now, what do you think is the role or should be the role of leaders when it comes to tackling diversity and inclusion challenges in the workplace?
Yeah. No, we have an incredibly important role. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, we want to definitely create diverse teams, but I think the more critical aspect of our leadership is creating that inclusive work
Hmm.
environment. And I recently saw, I think the best definition of inclusivity is
Hmm.
really to foster and create an environment, the conditions by
Hmm.
which everybody can thrive and reach their potential.
Hmm.
Right? It's those conditions, that work environment where because everybody brings something to the table, and um, as leaders, we need to be really aware and thoughtful about that. And quite frankly, think about ourselves, right? I mean, um, we all, kind of rose through the ranks, and we probably all had circumstances and conditions that perhaps prevented us from doing everything that we knew we could. So
Hmm.
I think as a leader, you got to be very aware of the various demands that people have in their personal lives, or culturally, what could get in the way, and try and level those, get rid of those barriers, level that playing field, as they say, so that
Hmm.
everybody can bring their best self and know that they can thrive. And I guess the other aspect of it is creating an environment of trust.
Hmm.
Very, very challenging to do in a corporate environment, I would say. And so if you don't trust, and maybe that's another aspect for me, if you don't trust your colleagues, your leadership, you're not going to bring your authentic self to the table. You're going to always hold back, right? You're going to always say, all right, well, I guess I better behave differently because that's what's expected of me, as opposed to this is how I really want to, this is my true authentic self. There's a certain amount of risk that a person takes,
Hmm.
when they kind of let their guard down, if you will, or they show up as who they really want to be, because they worry about how that's going to be perceived.
Hmm.
And as leaders, we need to make sure we give our folks a lot of air cover and create that environment where they feel trust, they can be authentic, their
Hmm.
true selves, and feel that they're now operating with conditions that help them excel as individuals. That's when we get them. That's when we really see the power of the diverse environment, and why inclusivity is so important.
Now, is there something in your career that you look back that makes you the most proud?
Oh, a few things. I mean, I had an opportunity to work after I had my third child, my son. I was looking at what I should do next, and the career opportunity I took was probably one of the most challenging for me. Was I live in Toronto, based out of Toronto. I took a job in Chicago where I had to commute every day, every week, I should say.
Hmm.
And so, three young children, just had a baby. And my husband ended up, he took, we were going to share our childcare leave. So
Hmm.
he stayed home with the kids. He took an extra year's leave of absence.
Hmm.
And so allowed me to really focus on what I thought was the best career opportunity, which meant traveling every week and living in a different city, in a different country, in
Hmm.
Chicago. So there was a certain amount of it was hard on me. I mean, my family was well taken care of. I was the one that was by myself, but I worked really, really hard, and I think that really catapulted my career, because when I came back to Toronto, within 6 months, I got my first executive role.
Hmm.
It was an incredibly fulfilling job opportunity. Like what I accomplished in that year and a half was tremendous. And that just proved to me that I could do it.
Hmm.
I had all the support that I needed at home. The kids were in great hands with my husband, with their dad. My mom and dad were really helpful. So for me, those were the conditions, right, that I needed
Yeah.
to be taken care of that allowed me to reach my potential and to thrive. So I was very grateful that my organization gave me that support. Obviously took care of the things that I thought were really important, that were very important to me. And so I had the perfect conditions, to do really, really well. And I demonstrated that I could, certain amount of risk. So this is the risk theme again. You got to take some risk, right? But your gut tells you, listen to your gut, which says, you can do this. And that was, I was really personally, that was a tremendous, tremendous boost to the career and gave me a lot of confidence that I could pretty well take anything on.
Now, balancing the mind, as you're working through such extensive roles, how do you create that balance? Like, what do you do in your free time?
Yeah. Oh, I'm probably not the best. I probably haven't really struck the best balance on that. I do find work extremely consuming, all consuming. I honestly have difficulty shutting down and turning off. But what I do is certainly a lot of family time. And I like to run. So the running is, I'm not like a super duper athlete, but running and exercising is my time. It really does allow me to unwind and unplug. Recently, do a lot more yoga. I'm kind of addicted to Netflix, though, which you can argue whether that really turns your mind off or just engages your mind a little differently. But it's a way for me to unwind as well. On the weekends, early on in, when my husband and I were having children and balancing off, we decided that weekends were our time with our family 100% of the time. So we, as you think about activities for your children, we chose to have our activities for our kids during the weekdays, which meant, hectic weekdays, but that meant that on weekends, we weren't, taking the kids to all of their, sports and, activities and things that they signed up for. So our weekends were almost 100% dedicated to family time. And that is something that we have maintained throughout. And I would recommend that, like that at least that was a way for us to make sure that we reconnected with our family and that we weren't maintaining that hectic pace.
Right.
7 days a week. Yes, we can probably sustain it for 5 days a week. But those 2 days we really, really unplugged and connect as a family. And that actually really helped. That's probably the single biggest thing that we decided to do that helped us and continues to help me.
Now, what would you then say is your leadership credo?
Like I said, personal accountability, create an inclusive environment, be really honest and transparent with your team, and encourage your team to take some risk, right? To advance agendas, to advance change, and things aren't, when you take risk, think about the risk that you're taking, and typically, if you trust your gut and trust your instincts, you'll get really positive outcomes. Stay very engaged, and just really care about what you're doing. If there's one overarching thing, really, really care about what you're doing. That initial, leadership trait, right? Like you think like an owner. It just, when you care about what you're doing, I just think you get much, much better outcomes.
Any specific book or types of books you would recommend for leadership?
Oh, you know what? I'm the worst person to ask about that because I actually don't think business books. I personally don't really enjoy reading business books. I actually don't think they're very well written. So I have I sort of maybe a bias against them. I mean, I like reading The Economist, a really good selection of articles around business, politics, science. I like reading Harvard Business Review, and I just like literature. Um, it's you could learn a lot about human dynamics and factors. By reading literature. I love biographies. Again, kind of diving deep on individuals and kind of their personal lives. I always found those very, very, very interesting and very, very engaging. So I just personally have just never really found business books to be all that interesting to me. So I kind of avoid them.
Now, if you ever had a chance to sit down and write a book, is there something you would write about?
Yeah, I probably, writing about something that it's an interesting, just based on my previous response, would I write a book around, I don't know, I'm not sure what kind of a book that I would write. I'd want it to be useful and meaningful to people. I think I would write a book. Actually, the books that I really like the most are the ones that, like The Wealthy Barber, right? How he told the story, David Shelton told the story around, sort of lessons through a narrative. I would probably write a book like that, where it's, maybe the backdrop would be a mom, professional woman, through her, through her daily lives as a narrative, as a story, and embedded in that story would be, how she dealt with being a mom, having kids, advancing career, and balancing off, all the things that we talked about. So I probably would write it more like a story. There's a lot of power in storytelling. I think storytelling, you actually remember, first of all, if you tell a story, and then that story is instructive in the process. So that's probably how I would want to kind of tell my story, but in the form of the fictional character, right? But embed instructiveness in it.
Now, if there was an opportunity to put you on the cover of Times Magazine, what would you like it to say?
Oh, goodness. Don't know that I would really even want to be on the cover of a magazine. Yeah, I think it would be maybe the factor around inclusivity, and how I've really worked to create inclusive and work environments for my team. Create conditions that allowed my team to thrive and advance their careers, fulfill their potential, be the people, and if I had some small contribution to that, I think for me, that's probably as fulfilling as it gets, when I think about, as a professional.
Now, if you could have a quote that would be the legacy of how you'd like to be known as a leader, what would that be?
Trust yourself, be confident in yourself, and be your true, authentic self. And if you can't be that in the work environment, you really need to find that environment that allows you to be your true self. Like, life is just way too short. Your professional career is the dominant part of your time on earth, as it will, as the best years of your life, as you're growing. You need to make those years as fulfilling as possible.